Every character, location, or experience you've read about in my crime fiction novels holds a piece of reality. I'm Helen Taylor. Welcome to the story behind my stories, the video podcast where crime fiction meets my authentic experience. Here, we delve into the real-life inspirations and intimate stories that shaped my novels. Discover how my everyday encounters, adventures, and travels translate into tales as gripping as they are genuine. The story behind my stories goes behind the words on the page to reveal the backstory that inspires my writing. Hit follow or subscribe and ensure you're part of this journey. Hi, welcome to episode 7 of the story behind Connecting Trains. So this week's episode I want to talk about Angela Phillips and Tim. DC, Angela Phillips and Tim. They work together a lot in Connecting Trains, and Angela Phillips I wanted to be the ambitious one, the one that crossed the line or stepped over the line or walked very tightly along the line. And in order to show that and bring that out, and the sort of lengths that she would go to be successful as a detective or a police officer, I needed a counterpart that almost she could manipulate and use so that I could get that across. But not only that, you do get in teams an overly ambitious person who comes across as being a team player, wanting to be in with a team, has the same ideas of where they want to get to and what they want to achieve, but then also is a manipulated, is a manipulator, and does that with another member of the team. You also then get in a team somebody who just ticks along and does their job. They may be good at it, but they're under the radar and are easy fodder, if you like, for the ambitious ones, or perceived to be easy fodder. And that was the sort of dynamic I wanted in Connecting Trains. And so the amount of impact each of those two have on the story varies, and hopefully those two things come across. So I've got various extracts that I was going to read so that you can get an idea of the two characters in the context of one is stronger, seen more, visible more in the book, and one is manipulated, used a bit more, but maybe still comes out okay, because at the end of the day the right one, they are just, head down, getting on with their job. So I'm going to read these excerpts and add my own dialogue around it as we go. So right at the beginning, just after we'd done sort of the team intros and met the other members of the team that Goodwin had worked with before, etc., there's just a one-liner here on Angela Phillips. So she says, "So I'll be working on one being black and one being white, sir?" asked Angela Phillips, a tall, well-built DC Goodwin had seen around and heard good things about. An action girl, always in the thick of it. So that's our first introduction to Angela. And then when Goodwin, further on in that meeting, hands out some of the tasks, the one he hands to Angela is this paragraph. Good, Penny, you're right. Angela, go back to the family of the old man and ask about the baseball cap. See if it belongs to one of them. If they visited recently, left it there. You know the deal. Tim, you go with her. So Goodwin gives Angela the task, and then, so even at this point, Tim is a follower, not a leader. And then we introduce Tim. We say, Tim, a middle-aged, nondescript sort of man. Silent but thorough had been the feedback on him. Just stated one word. Lunchtime, sir. Angela continued. Yes, I noticed that. They all seem to be around lunchtime, between 12 and 2 p.m. So this is where the dynamic between the two of them starts. There's just a one line, and he is the last person introduced, as he is the follower. He is the head down, just do my job, do what I'm asked. Silent but thorough is how he's described, and that's how he's been described to Goodwin. But Angela immediately is competitive. Oh yes, I thought that, sort of thing. So and that sets them up for the dynamic of them going off to do this investigation between them. So then the next time they meet up, a little bit further along in the book, Goodwin says, Angela and Tim, I'd like you to stick with the cap. We know from the boy, assuming that the two men we saw are the perpetrators, that one of them is wearing a Woking FC baseball cap. Now it's a very long shot, but let's find out where they are sold. Get me a list of who sells them, to whom, and who bought them, if we can. Talk to Woking FC if you need to, elicit their help and support, Goodwin said. Both of them eagerly wrote down the task, minds ahead of the game, thinking of the possibilities, not yet comprehending the futility of the task. So they're brought together a bit as a team, but as the meeting goes on, Angela realises that they've screwed up. And if you go back to a couple of episodes before, where I explained that Goodwin laid down his rules of how he wanted the team to function, and one was, if you screw up, tell me. But Angela doesn't necessarily do that in the way that Goodwin meant. By the time Goodwin did turn away from the wall, Angela's palms were sweating and her heart was pounding. She was nervous. She was waiting to tell Goodwin she had screwed up. Or her and Tim had, although Tim didn't seem to realise they had. She hadn't either, until something Goodwin had said. So this again is her comparing, competing. She's the smart one, she's realised. Tim hasn't. She explains why she wants to talk to him. It's the cap, sir. Goodwin nodded expectantly at her. Well, the family did say the grandson visited. They also said the cap was his, sir. Yes, where are you going, Constable? He's in a rush. He needs to get out to Neil's to carry on. So she then explains that they screwed up. That after you told us what the little boy had given you in the statement about the IC1 male wearing a Woking FC cap, I realised then. You see, we asked the family about the baseball cap, had it there in an evidence bag. What they actually said was that the son had a Woking FC baseball cap. What we didn't do is get them to check whether this cap, Angela lifted it to show Goodwin, was his cap. and we never saw the boy, sir, so can't confirm he has one, or if this one is his. I'm sorry, sir. Never crossed my mind until you said the perpetrator had one too. She stood there waiting for the lecture on collecting information, never making assumptions, and always backing up the verbal statement with hard evidence if possible. Goodwin thanks her, takes the cap off of her because that's where him and Niels are going. And then I go on to say, Angela somehow felt more admonished from his understanding than she would have if he had bawled her out. She handed the cap to him and hung her head, her red locks falling forward, giving her more of a forlorn look. Goodwin took the cap, looked like he might add something, but then shook his head and left. Now Goodwin's thinking here, he doesn't quite fit together for him. She looked after him and then turned to walk over to join the others. As she looked up, she saw Tim was watching her with suspicion. She strode over to them. What was that little tete-a-tete about? Tim asked her, his green eyes watching her closely. So, while they've been out doing this research for the hat, Tim's getting wise to her. And so this is where we bring in that Tim watching her with suspicion, his sort of catty comment, and that he's watching her closely. He doesn't trust her. I was just telling D.I. Goodwin that we screwed up, Angela informed him matter-of-factly. You didn't think that we could have discussed it first and then gone to him together? Tim asked calmly. I don't suppose you mentioned that I said we should check the cap was his. So Tim's bringing up that he hadn't screwed up. All he'd done wrong was be manipulated and forced into a situation by her. So then there's a bit more about that. And then she decides that she's going to nullify Tim a little bit by saying that she's going to tell Goodwin that Tim had suggested they do their job properly, and she would again do it in private and ensure Tim saw, so that she could not say that to Goodwin, but then tell Tim that's what she did do. I have seen this in my experience. Again, it was a bank, it was corporate, where sometimes young, ambitious new joiners think they know more than the people managing them, that they haven't been doing it for years, and especially in the police force, I would imagine, have seen it all before, with victims and perpetrators and everything. And it does make me smile that the youngsters, I remember my dad always saying to me, you can listen to me or not, just remember I've been on this planet 50 years longer than you have, and I might just be right. And at the time I'd be like, you don't know, Dad, I know more, I'm young, it's not your world anymore, sort of thing. And now I'm there. I find myself saying the same thing to my daughter, because experience is, counts for so much, but when you're young, you don't realise. A couple of the odd sayings, youth is wasted on the young, because they don't have the experience to value and use their youth. And when we all find that out and realise it when we're a bit older, it's a bit late. But then now we go into a little bit more about Angela Phillips. Angela Phillips wanted to be a DCI. It was her hope and her dream. Angela Phillips always got what she wanted. She always had. Her flaming red hair and dark green eyes had won her many a man before, or for many of her friends. Her determination and courage put her in situations that had helped her prove her worth as a detective. She had been highly praised after the drug bust, where she had been an undercover girlfriend of one of the dealers. If she could be the one to crack this case, then she would be well on her way up that ladder towards her treasured goal of DCI. And she didn't care who she dropped in it or had to climb over to get there. So that gives you a real insight into the sort of person she is. And I'm not making up characters that are completely unique and don't have traits of anybody. We're all different, we're all unique, but there are things that we will all have come across, people who behave like this. So this is after she's told Goodwin that they screwed up, and then Goodwin goes to the car. So now you see Goodwin's side of how he's interpreting what Angela's just told him, with regards to Tim too. Niels was hanging around the car looking forlorn as Goodwin walked out of the building and across to the car. He lifted the cap for Niels to see. Phillips gave me this. They never established that this was actually the grandson's cap, only that he had one. Sloppy police work. What came over them? Niels shook his head. Doesn't sound like Tim, sir. I heard he was thorough, good at his job. Have you worked with him before? Asked Goodwin over the roof of the car as he opened the passenger door. Everything you heard is spot on, replied Niels, before he then ducked into the driver's seat and finished inside the car. He is very thorough and takes his job very seriously. It really just does not sound like him. As for Angela Phillips, I never worked with her, but I've heard she is ambitious, to the point of stepping on anyone who gets in her way. That's what I heard, anyway. I was told she likes to be in on the action, be the one with the collar. Maybe I should get Tim's side of the story before jumping to conclusions that he didn't even recognise their mistake, when she at least did, mumbled Goodwin, more to himself than Niels. So there you've got the other take, because Tim has worked with Niels has worked with Tim before, but Goodwin has no experience of either of them, so he's only going on what has been reported to him. But he's not sure. He's really not sure. So the deceit and the dynamic continues, and Angela steps up for all the important visible roles and whatever, and as you go through the book it becomes clearer and clearer how strongly she wants what she wants and she's going for it. And he's not mentioned a lot through the book, Tim, but that is reflective of his character. He is that member of the team who does what they need to do, keeps the head down, is very thorough, does a really good job, but doesn't feel the need to shout about it and prove that they're doing it. They know they're doing a good job, they're just doing a good job. Whereas Angela is the other side and has to shout all the time at all the good stuff she's doing. Then later in the book, Operation Connecting Trains is a go, and they are in the midst of the operation, and Angela's desire to be the one with the collar comes through, She is convinced that she is right. And because Goodwin is known to the suspects, he's in the control room with the controller, and they're all out on the operation and they're all radioing in, etc. This is Goodwin. Took the mic and said, "Penny, Goodwin here. Phillips has gone errant. She is not answering, reporting, or following procedure. We're sure that the two on the train are not our boys. If they don't alight, I want Phillips off. Okay?" "Copy, sir," said Penny. "Will be my pleasure. Out." Goodwin smiled. He had detected a little animosity from that first encounter between the two of them about Carter's timetable, but Penny had maintained a professional attitude. Phillips, on the other hand, was being far from professional right now. It's this classic thing of don't ask for permission, ask after you've screwed up, ask for forgiveness. And so Goodwin sends Penny on to the train to make Phillips leave, and Penny's a little bit sneaky with it in that she pretends she's on medication, and that Dr. Goodwin is waiting for her psychiatric appointment. So there's a bit of lightheartedness there as Penny's trying to get Phillips to come off, get off the train. But they can all hear what's going on with Penny trying to get to come off. I'll leave all of that. And so then she says, 11 to base. Did you catch all that? Copy 11, we caught it. Bowman was staring wide-eyed at the speaker. Who is she? Because Bowman had come into the control room and asked Goodwin how it was going. And Goodwin had said, it's a complete disaster, and I'm trying at the moment to get an errant officer to respond to calls and get off the train. So then Bowman's listened to the exchange that's gone on, so he asks that. So Goodwin responds, "Which one?" asked Goodwin, not waiting for an answer. He went on, "The professional officer trying to do her job is Penny Stock. The errant, solo artist, who has screwed up the whole operation, is Sergeant Angela Phillips. And this is not the first time in this case that I have had cause to question her ethics, along with her team player abilities." Bowman says, "Okay, we'll talk about this later." And Penny comes back over the airwaves. "What do you want me to do now?" asked Penny. Goodwin thought for a moment. He didn't like to leave an officer in the field alone. Phillips was disobeying orders, but he didn't want a scene. To pull an officer off a train in front of everyone would give the press a field day should anyone leak it to them. "Tell 8 to get back on and stay with her. Let the train go," said Goodwin. "Base to 8. Board the train. Keep 6 in sight. Do not approach. Just keep her safe," said the controller. So this is Goodwin. She may have really pissed him off and screwed up the whole operation, and Goodwin is absolutely fuming, but the safety of his team is important, so he keeps somebody on to watch Angela while she continues to screw everything up. Now, the last bit I just want to add here is still the thought process that Angela Phillips is going through. Angela Phillips watched through the windows as Goodwin and Bowman conversed. It pleased her when she could see Bowman shake his head and disagree with Goodwin. She was more angry with Goodwin than she had ever been with anyone right now. She had realised on her journey back, after that snotty-nosed constable had told her about the operation, that she may be in a little trouble. What she hadn't expected was to find, as soon as she got back, that she was to report to Bowman and not Goodwin. She had decided that she could sweet-talk Goodwin, as she had about the cap. She would explain to him that she was sure the suspects could hear her talking, so she turned it down. That she was gathering intelligence. Everything she had done, she felt sure she could explain away, coming out of it looking like the super cop that she was. The thing that had scuppered her plans was that Goodwin, she had come to realise, cared deeply about his victims, wanted nothing more than to lock away the culprits and move on to the next case. Whilst her motivation was different, she wanted to lead, to be at the top, to be a super cop. To get there, the most important thing was arrests, arrests, and arrests. She needed to be in on the arrests, needed to be the one to get the information that led to the arrest, be the one that caught them in the act and the one that arrested them. But she could play on the old heartstrings with Goodwin, she figured. A few tears about the old man and how much she wanted to catch those that had done it. Give him some information, even if it wasn't true, but couldn't be proved, that gave a good reason for her ignoring her own textbook rules. She had that all figured by the time she returned to the MIT building. But Bowman, he was an unknown entity. She didn't know what worked on him, and she wasn't doing very well at the moment. So again, there's nothing more towards the end of the book on Tim, because Tim does his job. Tim is the nondescript member of the team that you can always rely on, and he's very thorough. There is absolutely nothing wrong with Tim. Angela Goodwin, she's a whole other kettle of fish. Whole other kettle of fish. I'm not going to tell you what happens any more than that to give away anything else. But that comes to the end of the team, really. The only thing I haven't covered is Goodwin and Bowman. Goodwin we've had snippets of throughout, and his interactions with the others, and a lot of what I talked about at the beginning with his management style and whatever. And obviously Goodwin you got to know a little bit in Tie-Dye. So next week I'm going to add some bits about Goodwin, but mainly I think I'm going to give you some more background on Bowman and maybe a little bit more about connecting trains and where that all ended up at the end, and round it out. This season will be an episode shorter, as we haven't got the location as much to discuss, and it was important for Connecting Trains to get the team down pat so that you know who they are, because they do return, or at least some of them, in Hello or Goodbye. No, not Hello or Goodbye, in Lethal Leith Hill. Very much so. So that's it for this week, and I will see you next week. Bye.